Good morning, friends. Today we will learn about the payment. Let me introduce myself, Professor Asutosh K. Patel. After completing this chapter, you will be able to differentiate between rigid payment and flexible payment. You will be able to draw and understand various layers of flexible payment. You will be able to identify about which tests to be conducted for soil subgrade incorporating flexible or rigid payment. Now, what is rigid payments? Rigid payments are those which contain sufficient beam strength to be able to bridge over the localized subgrade failures and areas of inadequate support. Load is transmitted through beam action of a slab in rigid payments. Rigid payments are those which reduces the stress concentration and distributes the reduced stresses uniformly to the area under the slab. Now, rigidity does not deform under stress. Concrete air entrant increases resistance to frost damage and de-icing salt corrosion. Reinforcement may be bars or mesh. Continuous rigid payments have heavy reinforcement. Joints are used in the non-continuous payments to allow for thermal movement includes the filler and surface sealant. Rigid payments laid as single layer by concrete paver. The figure shows the various layers of the rigid pavement which we saw earlier. The basic components of the concrete pavement includes, uh, you can see from the figure, various components of the concrete pavement. It includes thickness, surface smoothness, longitudinal joint, transverse joint, surface textures, tie bars, sub base or base, dowel bars, concrete materials, etc. Load distribution in the rigid pavement we can show from the figure. Uh, Rigid pavements are so named because the pavement structure defects very little under loading due to the high modulus of elasticity of their surface cores. The rigid pavement structure is typically composed of a plain cement concrete surface core built on the top of either the subgrade or an underlying base course. Because of its relative rigidity, the pavement structure distributes loads over a wider area with only one or at most two structural layers. There are other types of surface also, i.e. reinforced, continuous reinforced, etc. The structure of the rigid pavement. Surface core. This is the top layer which consists of the RCC slab reinforced or continuously reinforced slab. Base core. This is the layer directly below the PCC layer and generally consists of aggregate or stabilized subgrade. Subbase core. This is the layer under the base layer. A subbase is not always needed and therefore may often be omitted. Types of rigid pavement that are jointed plain concrete pavement and the continuous reinforced concrete pavement. Now pavement comparison which we seen earlier, so need not to repeat it again. Pavement comparison. The types of pavement failure. Failure criteria in flexible pavement are fatigue cracking, rutting, thermal cracking, whereas in rigid pavement, fatigue cracking, pumping or erosion, and others are faulting, spalling, joint deterioration, etc. And we can show from the table the flexible pavement versus rigid pavement comparison between flexible pavement and rigid pavement. Thank you very much.